If you want to study medicine after finishing year 12, then this is for you, because I'm going to run through everything you need to know about how the medicine entry process works here in Australia, so you can maximize your chances of success. And so the first place to start is the two different ways you can study medicine. There's undergraduate entry and there's postgraduate entry. What undergraduate entry means is that essentially as soon as you finish year 12, you go into medicine, within 5 years you'll be finished. And so undergraduate medicine is the fastest, it's the most efficient way of graduating and becoming qualified as a doctor. And so for most people, this is probably their first preference if you're certain that medicine is for you. Postgraduate entry, it's a bit different. Essentially, you finish year 12, you study another degree first, like generally science or biomedicine. Once you finish that, you then go into medicine. And so what that means is it does take about 8 to 10 years to actually finish. And so for most people, undergraduate entry is their first preference. If they don't get in there, they then try for postgraduate medicine, just because it's a lot faster studying medicine right away. In terms of where you can actually study medicine, there is quite a few different options. These are the key universities on screen here. And what you'll notice is there's universities in every state. For example, in Victoria, there's Monash. In New South Wales, there is UNSW. In South Australia, there's University of Adelaide. Queensland, there's UQ. So there's a lot of different options here. I'd recommend maybe pausing the video, having a look to see which ones are suitable for you. What most people do is they have their first preference, which is usually a university in their state, but then they have a few backup universities, which are in other states. So for example, I know some people who were applying for medicine from Victoria, they were hoping to get into Monash University, but if they didn't get in, they were happy to go to Tasmania or UQ, for example. And so it's worth having a look at all of the universities, even if they're not in your state, just because if you really want to study medicine, it's probably worthwhile being open to other universities as well. One key thing is that between all of these universities, it's not like they all have their own admissions process and they all do things completely differently. There's 3 key assessments that all of the universities look at to determine which students will get into medicine and which students won't. And so these 3 are number 1, the ATAR, number 2, the UCAT, and number 3, the interview. One key thing with this is for most university degrees in Australia, for example, law, biomedicine, computer science, engineering, these degrees all only consider the ATAR. They don't look at anything else. There's no other criteria. If you get the ATAR score, you're in. The difference with medicine is that they do consider 2 other factors, and the other 2 factors are actually worth more than the ATAR score. So obviously the ATAR, we know what that is. The ATAR is the culmination of all your work throughout high school. So in year 12, the results you get put together and you essentially get an ATAR score, which is a ranking out of 99.95. And so 99.95 is the highest score you can get, which means you're in the top 0.05% of students in the state. 99 means you're in the top 1%, 98 means you're in the top 2%, and so on. This is worth 1/3 of the process. So even though that we go to school for 6-7 hours every day, even though we've been at school for 12, 13 years by the time we get to the end of high school, the ATAR, so our academic excellence, is actually only worth 1/3 of the process. The UCAT score, which is a 2-hour exam you sit halfway through year 12, is also worth 1/3. And a lot of people often say, well, why is that the case? Why is the UCAT exam, even though it's such a short assessment that you sit in year 12, why is it worth the same amount as the ATAR? And really the reason for that is because the ATAR is a good indicator of your academic excellence, how hardworking, how gifted and talented are you at school. But the UCAT is really there for a different reason. And that's because the universities are not just looking for students who are doing well at school, but they're also looking for students who will go on to become good doctors, students who are really uniquely suited to the medical profession and who'll stay and become doctors in the long term. Because they don't want people getting into medicine, studying it for a few years and dropping out, or even graduating and then not becoming a doctor. They want to make sure that there's enough high quality doctors in Australia. And so that's why they have the UCAT exam, to find students who are uniquely suited to medicine. And so that's why it's a 2-hour exam, but it's worth 1/3. Same reason for the interview. Again, they're looking for people who are passionate about medicine, not just people who don't really care about it, who are just doing it because they can get into it. They're looking for people who actually want to become doctors long term. And so that's why even though the interview, it's probably a 30 to 60-minute interview right at the end of year 12, it's also worth 1/3. And so probably key takeaway here is that even though for most degrees in Australia, it's just the ATAR, that's all that matters. And the school system's kind of set up to help students with that. It's providing us a lot of support at school every single day around the ATAR. But for medicine, it is a bit different. The ATAR's worth 1/3, but the UCAT and the interview, they're worth 1/3 each. And so they're actually 2/3 of the process. They're most of your chances of getting into medicine. Now, the logical question from here is what scores do you actually need to be competitive to get an offer to a university? And generally, this is probably the minimum that you would want to be aiming for. So with ATAR, you'd probably want to have a minimum ATAR of 98. With UCAT, you'd want to have a minimum UCAT score of the 90th percentile. And generally with the interviews, a third of students succeed. And so what this means is if you do well on the ATAR, if you do well on the UCAT, you'll then be invited for an interview, and a third of those students succeed. And so what this means, even though the interview, it's right at the end of the process, it's easy to think, maybe I can just neglect that part. It's really important to prepare for that specifically as well, because everyone in the interviews are people who have got 98, 99, 99.5 ATARs. Everyone in the interviews has got 90th, 95th, 99th percentile UCAT scores. And so it is important to be able to differentiate yourself amongst a lot of students who are getting very high scores in these two factors if you want to maximize your chances of getting into medicine. And so key takeaways from this video is, number one, you will have to excel in all three assessments if you want to get into medicine. It's not good enough just to do well on the ATAR, but to have a low UCAT score, or to do really well on the UCAT and have a low ATAR score. You need to do well in all three factors, including the interview, if you want to get into medicine. One other key takeaway is the UCAT. It's worth just as much as all of your school subjects combined. And so even though it is that short 2-hour exam compared to the ATAR, which you've been working on for 10, 11, 12 years, it is worth just as much. And so it's definitely worthwhile. Generally what we say is think about what sort of support you have for your ATAR. You want to have the same level of support and preparation for the UCAT as you would for your ATAR. Same thing for the interviews. It's worth a third. It counts for just as much as all of your school subjects but combined. So at the very least, you want to treat these like extra school subjects and give them proper preparation. Make sure you're preparing for them properly. Often what a lot of students do is they'll just get some practice questions. They'll just quickly cram practice questions right before the exam, but would never do that for a school subject. For maths, for chemistry, for English, would never just do practice questions right before the exam and cram for them. Would learn topics all the way throughout the year and prepare for them properly. And that's definitely what we want to do for these two as well. And so hopefully it's provided a bit more clarity on how the medicine entry process works here in Australia. Key takeaways: if you want to get into medicine, you want to make sure you do well in the ATAR, the UCAT, and the interview for the best possible chance of success. On this channel, we'll be posting a lot more videos on how to excel in the medicine entry process. And if you're looking for our guidance on how to make sure you do well in all three assessments, then you're welcome to book in a call below this video with one of our academic advisors, and we can map out a plan to make sure you're prepared and you have the best possible chance of getting into medicine. Otherwise, good luck. I hope to hear of you getting into medicine very soon.